Alright, so I'm going to show you how I wired in my Denso vent window motor out of a 100 series, out of an LX, that I'm going to put in my GX utilizing the factory height control switch as my open and close. So to start off with, I had to figure out how to reverse the polarity to open it and close it because there's only 2 wires going into this motor. So I had to get 2 single pole double throw relays and wire that into my switch. So to start with, I had to give both the yellow and black wires, that's pole 86 and 87, I had to give that 12 volts. So I just combined them and ran that just for demonstration. I haven't hooked up the battery, so I gave those two 12 volts. I had to ground 87A, which are the red wires coming out of here. I had to ground those, and then the 2 pin 30s are the output to the motor, and then the 2 white wires, which are pins 85, those are the inputs from the switch, but those are actually a ground from the switch. So I had to modify my switch a little bit. I'm using this because I wanted to look factory, but I don't use the height control anymore because I have Icon suspension on mine. So I had to pull the yellow wire out of the plug and ground that, because it would normally be 12 volt. It would supply the 12 volts to the switch, and then your green and blue wires would be the 12 volt output. But I needed to give the relays a ground, so I had to ground the switch instead of powering the switch. So like I said, I grounded the yellow wire. You can see it going to my ground pole on my battery there, and I have the green and the blue wires going all the way around to my inputs on my relay, the 2 white wires. So when I use the buttons, it opens and closes the window motor. Took me a long time to figure out how to do this, but seems to work pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and put it in the vehicle, and we'll pick it up there. Alright, so here's an update on my progress. Got the motor in, it's installed, it's working, everything's wired. I think I figured out why it was never an option to have power vents in the GX, because if you notice the way the seatbelt rides right there, when it's over here it actually does pull against the motor, and I would say that's probably was a concern. Just the seatbelt over time riding against the motor and maybe starting to fray or something. But other than that, everything is working. My relays, if you can see, I have them sitting right in here, so I can access them through the little panel here where you get to your jack and stuff. But the system is working. The switch is up front, it's working, and just gotta put everything together. I am definitely going to have to cut out, or I should say notch out, my panel here, because the opening right here for the manual lever is definitely smaller than what it needs to be to clear the motor. So I'm going to notch that out, put the panel back in, and we'll go from there. Alright, so I got it all wired in, I got it installed permanently. I did have to notch quite a bit out of that panel to clear the motor. I know the 100 series has a some kind of cover that goes over the motor there to make it look a little better. I'm going to look into it and see if I can pick one of those up. But as you can see, it is working. It's not hitting anything. What I decided to do that was a little different than my original plan is I hooked it to constant power instead of switched power. That way I can operate it without having to start the car. In theory, it shouldn't put a drain on my battery, but I've got it all wired in, got it working. Another thing about it that I plan on doing is since it's a grounded switch, instead of needing 12 volts, I can put as many switches on it as I want. So I think I'm going to put a switch somewhere in the back. That way I can just open the hatch and open and close it from back there without having to turn the battery on. But another thing, the switch was illuminated from the factory. It doesn't light up anymore since I pulled the 12 volts out of it. So that is one thing about the switch there. It doesn't have its light anymore, but I'll show you what it looks like from back there. Give me 1 second, let me open it. I'll walk around the back. But that's all it is.